So speaking of wisdom and lessons learned, one of the topics I've pinned here that I can't let us get through this without talking about is Planetside Arena.
Yeah.
Um, I rewatched some of your content on Arena to as prep for this to just remember what you've said and what you've put out there. But maybe you can just walk us through it. Your experience first learning about Arena, what your initial impressions were, and how it progressed.
Yeah, I think Arena is a tough one because, it depended on the community getting behind it and including the content creators. And it had felt like we had just been through the whole H1Z1 experience where we had kind of been shoved to the side. And it kind of felt like that all over again, where we're getting this new content, this new game that's in the franchise, but it's delivering something completely. I know they're putting the carrot out there of Massive Clash, right? But it's in its iteration was delivering something completely different.
Yeah.
So how do you voice to a development company that you love that, hey, we want more content like what's already here? I don't know how you do that. And then I think the second big problem really just harkens back to the challenge video. When I played, if I was playing in small groups, it was unfair out there, man. I'm not a terrific player, but
That's one of the things you highlighted. Yeah.
there was a lot of battles out there that I'm sure the other side felt like this wasn't fair or fun. And same thing, I ran into the groups out there that were, you put 12 players that are in Discord together and they will just wreck a lobby, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't have a solution to that. They didn't have, it was one of those things where they couldn't sell it to us, right? They couldn't sell it to Planetside 2 because the Planetside 2 experience was not in it yet. They had aspirations for that, but it was not in it yet. And so they had to go sell it to someone else, and they never did. They never had that budget to try to pitch it as the better version of H1Z1 or the next Battle Royale.
And also, I think Apex landed at the exact same time. They were planning on giving it to people, I think.
Yeah, well, you're right on. And then Apex, that was kind of the nail in the coffin, right?
That was the first thought that I had when I saw Apex is,
they were trying to sneak into the Battle Royale market, and then you had just this, because really Planetside was groundbreaking in that it was Battle Royale, but class-based. And then Apex was the same, even a wider version of that, right? A hero-based Battle Royale. Right. Now the Planetside, the Arena didn't even have a niche like that to kind of lean into. So, yeah, that was a tough one.
Yeah,
that had to be rough to see come down.
Tough is the word. You asked the question, how do you communicate with people who with developers of a game that you love? That's something that they've put out there as the next thing isn't really it, or it's not really there. And
right.
I think that a lot of people communicated the way I did, which is by opting out of the whole thing.
I think that's the most common one. Yeah. And you're probably right. That's probably the best way to do it. Right. Because I think, I understand that there are people that poured their heart and soul into this. Right. And it's frustrating to see a community tear it down. At the same time, you being investor of sorts. Right. I mean, a lot of us has probably invested a lot of money into the franchise, and then see that they're taking that in a different direction that you didn't want your investment to lead towards. Yeah. How do you voice that without actually getting a say at the table? You don't have a voting share. I don't know what the best way to do it is, but if you open your wallet, then you're voting yes, whether you want to be. I know some people are like, well, I'm voting for the Planetside franchise. I appreciate that, but in the end, you're probably also voting for Battle Royale. So, do you want to vote for that as well?
That's a complicated thing, and I think there's so many things that can easily be pointed to as like, this is one of the major things that didn't go right about it. I think one of the only ways that Arena could have won me over is by having a non-Royale mode from the outset that fucking smoked.
Absolutely.
Something that was unquestionably good, and you couldn't get in Planetside 2. Yeah.
And, that's one of those things where the devs are probably like, but we said we were bringing it. We said we were bringing it. And it's like, this community, we've seen so many phase ones. We've seen we've seen cool, awesome roadmaps that don't come to be.
Mm-hmm.
It had to be one of those things where they had to take that leap of faith and deliver that first for the Planetside 2 end to get on board.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure the powers that be above see Fortnite and they see PUBG and then they see Apex, and they say, no, we got to stick with that battle royale trend. And could it have worked if it was Massive Clash first? I wonder. I wonder if it would have been different. Because I do, Andy Seitz said that the concept was, let's try to deliver Planetside in a more like a 45-minute batch or match type of dose.
Nice
and there's
idea.
something to be said. There's something to be said for that, right? Because people can't stay through a 90-minute alert sometimes. They can't wait till the alert starts. They have to leave before the alert ends. It's tough to find a digestible chunk of Planetside 2 sometimes.
Yeah.
And so if they could have delivered, I understand the concept of wanting to deliver an arena-based but Massive Clash end of that. So I'm curious if that would have scratched the itch, done it better or worse. The one thing I always said was all the Planetside or the PlayStation people thought of MAG, right? The massive action game.
Yep.
And if they could have done something that brought that community over and they would have been able to nab the Planetside 2 community as well, then maybe they could have had the foundation for Planetside 3 like they wanted.
Is that really what they wanted, though?
Yeah, here's my thing, and it's a little bit cynical. To me, they're dangling Planetside 3 because everyone wants Planetside 3. They're dangling the words so people buy into it, even if they don't like what's there.
It's a dangerous spell to cast.
Right, exactly. So I understand when you're in the position, you're trying to make the game work. You gotta pull out all the stops. It's just, I think for most people, it kind of just was frustrating. Well, we should have started somewhere entirely different if this was our path to Planetside 3, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, when I was reading the letter that Andy wrote when the RPG announcement came down and he did invoke Planetside 3, it was clear that there was a need to inspire people. And it was a moment where he obviously put out the words and thought that he could back them up. I don't know if the community was ready to believe him at that point, but Outfit Wars and the Bastion and the Colossus and this little mystery about Esamir some of us are paying attention to all seem to be proving out that message of Planetside can be more than circling the drain of what you already know.
Absolutely. And it's kind of interesting because with Planetside Arena, I feel like the last thing that anyone wants is to say, hey, yelling and screaming and turning away from it. Like we don't want that behavior to work, but it did, right? The whole dev team came here because Planetside Arena dropped, and now we're getting cool things like Escalation, like Outfit Wars, because they reinvested into this title. And I want to give props again to Rel that I think that the fact that we had a history of being willing to spend on things like implants would allow them to say, okay, well, let's go back to it rather than just cut our losses. But at the same time, I feel like without people being so resistant to Planetside Arena, we wouldn't be in as good a place now. I feel like we just might be stuck with a Planetside 2 still dwindling and a very mediocre arena-based shooter.
Yeah.
If we had all kind of committed that one, So
yeah,
it worked.
You made a video with a great headline. Something to the effect of, actually, I think I wrote it down. Maybe I didn't write it down. Oh, here it is. Planetside Arena is a good game, but it must cannibalize Planetside 2 in order to survive.
It's 100%, and I have this thing, and I think people are going to think I'm pompous saying it. I hate when I'm right. It sucks because I'm right about a lot of different disappointing things, and I just didn't. With their approach, the only community they had access to was the Planetside 2 community, and they would have either had to onboard everyone and kill off all the fights on Planetside 2 to get those players into Arena, or they would not be able to onboard them, but they had no plan to onboard a different community. They didn't have a plan to onboard the Battle Royale community, the sci-fi community, the massive action game community. They didn't have anyone else they could onboard other than the Planetside 2 people. So, yeah, one game was going to win, and I'm glad it was Planetside 2. I want a Planetside 3. I do want a Planetside 3. I just think it needs to be a spiritual successor. And I do worry that Planetside 2 wasn't successful enough to warrant a 3.